Ladies and gentlemen, you are on African Hour. African Hour is a program that has been on the air for since 2000. All our guests are special, but today's guest is little, it may not be known to our African audience, but worldwide, she doesn't need any introduction. I call her Grandma Jane Elliott. By our African traditions, we have to respect culture and also respect our elders. So, Grandma Jane, you are welcome on African Hour. Welcome to African Hour, a program that brings truth to light. It is a blessing to be in your presence, for you to share your wisdom with my humble audience. I am through the Nkimben, host and producer of African Hour for over 20 years. I was born in Mankon, Bamenda, English Cameroon, Central Africa. I am married to my very religious, beautiful wife, Kien Kimben, for 28 years. We are blessed with four lovely, humble children. Dr. Manka Nkimben, who is with us, Nde Nkimben, who is also with us now. Anye Nkimben is my third son, and Fru Nkimben. I live in Lowell, Massachusetts, the all-American city. Grandma Jane, welcome to African Hour.
Wait a minute. You don't realize how complimented and how flattered and how pleased I am to be invited to be on this program. This is absolutely one of the high points of my life. Make no mistake about that. For you, who was born evidently and raised in the country from which we all came, from the continent from which we all came, who are willing to recognize that I might have even a tiny bit of wisdom, I'm absolutely tremendously flattered by that. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. To start things officially, please, Grandma, greet my humble audience and and tell them something about yourself.
Well, number one, I'm old, which, but you see, old for me is an acronym for octogenarian living dangerously. And that's what I am. I'm 89 years old, and I have been threatened with death numerous times because I say that there's only one race on the face of the earth, one race of human beings, and we all came from a country in Africa. And we are all 30th to 50th cousins. Now, I didn't know that until I did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise in discrimination with my third graders the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. Up until then, I would have sworn that I wasn't a racist and that I didn't behave in a racist way. But when I separated my students according to their eyes, which is a physical characteristic, which is how we separate people on this continent and on yours, I found out that the way you treat people is the way they end up. I didn't know. I had taken all the courses about expectations. I knew about expectations. I had my degree. I was ready to go. And I did not know what I was doing until I did that blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. I watched my brown-eyed third graders the first day of that exercise become arrogant, judgmental, self-satisfied, disgusting little people in the space of 15 minutes. Their behavior that day was absolutely unacceptable. On the other hand, I watched my blue-eyed, some of whom were brilliant, become children who couldn't succeed because I told them they couldn't. I told them they weren't as good as, they weren't as smart as, they weren't as able as, they weren't as capable as my brown-eyed children, and they became what I told them they were. I went home that night afraid to come back to school on Monday morning. I did the first on Friday, because I was sure that those blue-eyed kids were going to get even with the brown-eyed kids. I had heard the blue-eyed boys talking in the restroom about what they were going to do to those brownies when they got on top, when the blueies got on top. And I thought, oh, God, help me now, because I have created a monster here. On Monday, I went back into the classroom. I reversed the exercise. Blue-eyed people were on top, brown-eyed people were on the bottom, and the most absolutely amazing thing happened. I'll never forget it as long as I live. I watched those blue-eyed kids who had been abused by their peers on Friday refuse to abuse the kids who had abused them. And we went through the day with them acting like kids who knew better than to mistreat one another on the basis of a physical characteristic over which they had no control. So on Tuesday, before we discussed the thing at all, I had each child write a 4-paragraph composition telling who Martin Luther King Jr. was, how the child felt on Friday, how the child felt on Monday, and what discrimination is. When they had finished their compositions, we got in a circle. And I said, now I've got to know. You can say whatever you want to right now. You know that. This is the magic circle, but I have to know. You blue-eyed kids said you were going to get even with the brownies. You didn't get even with them. Why didn't you get even with your brown-eyed peers? And in that group and every other group that I did the exercise with at the 3rd grade level, those kids said, because we found out how it feels to be on the bottom and we didn't want to make anybody feel the way we did the day we were on the bottom. If we could just get that thought into the heads of what we call white people in this country and all over the world, if we could just get it into their heads, white boys, you don't have to be afraid. Excuse me. They aren't going to get even with you. They want to get equity. They do not, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that people of color want to get even with so-called white people. I think they want to get justice. And I don't believe in love, quite frankly. I believe in justice. I'd like to start a new society. And I make this proposal to college students and to people in corporations. And I say to them, we're going to start a new society. And in this society, I'm going to guarantee you either justice or love. If I give you justice, you might not get love. If I give you love, you might not get justice. Now, how many of you would vote to be guaranteed love? Not a hand goes up, because you know, and I know that on this continent in which I live, and in which you live now, we talk about love, but we don't legislate justice. And I know we're still not legislating justice when our president, whom I admire greatly, particularly compared to the last one, I mean, anybody would look better than that, when he signed a piece of legislation making interracial marriages legal. My God, how can you have an interracial marriage? That means that only those from outer space and one of our people can be legally married, because there's only one race on the face of the earth. You can't have an interracial marriage unless one of the partners is a space person. But we do these things because this is what we have learned. This man has more education than I'll ever get. He has more experience than I'll ever have. But he still thinks that he should sign a piece of legislation making interracial marriage legal. He is admitting his ignorance. And that bothers me a lot, because I know I've asked more than answered your question, but the biggest question, the biggest problem in the United States of America is not racism. It's self-imposed ignorance. And if you still think there's more than one race at this point in your life in this country, you are living with self-imposed ignorance. There are thousands of books out there that tell you the truth. It's time for people to start reading the truth, telling the truth, admitting the truth, and realizing that in this country, we aren't told the truth because we can't take it. We can't take the truth. Only 15 to 18% of the human population of the earth is classified as white. Did you know that? Only 15 to 18% of the human population of the earth is classified as white, and less than half of those are males. That means that about 6% of the human population of the earth is being allowed to tell the rest of us what we should do, how we should behave, who we should worship, what our lives should be like, and what we're willing to put up with. I find this absolutely unacceptable. Most people don't. Most people have been conditioned to believe that if it comes out of a male who's white, if it comes out of his mouth, it must be right. No, we've got to get over that. We've got to do it now. Every person, every what we call black woman. I hate the word black and I hate the word white because they do not describe people. I would rather white people are called melanemic. If you don't have enough iron in your blood to keep you healthy, you're anemic. If you don't have enough melanin in your skin to protect you from the dangerous rays of the sun, you must be melanemic. If you have more, you must be melanaceous, which rhymes with spacious and gracious and efficacious. And if you have a lot, you must be melanotic. And that word is in the dictionary. Now, I know this sounds adolescent, this sounds childish, this sounds too simple, but we didn't have black and white people until the Spanish Inquisition. And then Torquemada came up with those two colors, white for those who were lighter colored skin, black for those with darker skin, because white is the color of purity and goodness, and black is the color of savagery and evil. So he put this horrible chasm between us. It's extremely hard to cross that chasm because you're supposed to be savage and evil, and I'm supposed to be positive and good. I'm not good. I'm really angry. And I know I'm not supposed to be angry. I'm supposed to never show anger. I'm supposed to say, well, boys and girls, no, no, no. Children have to learn the truth. And those third graders, to this day, those kids remember that day. And to this day, those kids refuse to hear or to contribute to racist conversations. They won't do it. They won't laugh at black jokes. They won't do it because they say, Mrs. Elliott, I've been where they are, and I'm not going to let anybody talk that way about those people because I know how that feels. So now I just have to get them out of the habit of saying those people, and instead saying my cousins. You are my 30th to 50th cousins, whether you like it or not. That's the way it is. We are
Okay.
members of the same race. Now, did I answer your question?
Well, Grandma, you're just beginning. I know, I know you have more for us. But Grandma, let me tell you, I have my children. I would say your grandchildren as well. But I would like to say um, that you are blessed with that with your age. And after this, maybe you would tell us the recipe for long life. So,
Oh, I'll tell you what that is. Number one, you have to have a father who is moral and stable and tells you from the day you're born, if you're going to lie, don't lie to me. And I never heard him tell a lie. Never did. He absolutely would not tell a lie because that was what his father was. I think if you're going to have children who survive in a society in which our leader 6 years ago came to be the leader because of lying, and who is going to run for the presidency again in a year, and he's going to get it by lying, we're going to see the downfall of this nation if we don't raise children who refuse to go along with a liar. I think the reason I have survived as long as I have is, number one, I'm white. I can get away with saying whatever I want to because I'm white. Number two, I'm female, so I don't have any power. And people say in front of me, well, she's just a woman. And I think, oh, you fool, let me tell you about that. And they'll say, well, she's a female. I say, wait a minute. In order to get the word for a woman, they added the chemical symbol for iron to the word for a man, female. The reason I've survived as long as I have is because I have the iron that men don't have. And that's the reason we have children. Women can have children. I had 4 in 5 years, then we found out what was causing that. However, you need to realize I have lived as long as I have because I'm not afraid anymore. I was afraid one day in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, when the teachers had threatened to kill me. And so they raced me out of Uniontown to Harrisburg just as fast as they could that night. We were supposed to go out the next morning. But 3 carloads of blacks raced me to the Pennsylvania Turnpike in order to get me out of the situation in which I was going to die, because the teachers were so angry at what I said in a workshop that they wanted me dead. That was the last time I was frightened. I was scared to death that next morning when I got up and opened the door to my motel room. And I was in a two-story motel on the bottom floor at the end away from the desk. And here were all these windows looking down on that courtyard. And I said to myself, in one of those windows, in one of those rooms could be the person who was sent here to kill me. And I backed up and I closed the door. And then I can remember it as if it had happened yesterday. I said to myself, now you've got a decision to make. You can walk out of here and get to the desk and check out and go home, or you can stay here and be paralyzed with fear. Now, what are you going to do? You've got 4 kids and a husband who loves you back in Osage, Iowa. What are you going to do? And I knew what I had to do. So I put my purse over my shoulder. I took my my luggage cart in my hand. I opened the door. I stiffened my shoulders. I guess I thought if my muscles were stiff enough, the bullets would bounce off. And I walked quickly to the desk. I didn't run because I know that we run because we're scared because we run. That's what happens when the adrenaline starts moving. Then we're scared. I decided I'm not going to be scared. I walked quickly and straightly to the desk, and I got there and I thought, well, you damn dummy, look what you just did. You allowed them to scare you nearly to death. That will never happen again. And I've been threatened with death lots of times since then. And now when it happens, I say, go for it. You'll be doing me the best favor you possibly could, because I'll get to be with my husband, who died 9 years ago, and my son, who died 3 years ago. Go ahead, fool. Kill me. I don't fear death. And you have to remember, Martin Luther King Jr. didn't fear death. Now, I'm not comparing myself to Martin Luther King Jr., but he knew something that those who are threatening to kill me don't know. No power on earth can stop a man with a dream or an idea whose time has come.
Yep.
Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream. It is more alive now than it was when he was living, because we can't put him down anymore. The
Amen.
idea, the idea of one race is an idea whose time has come, and no power on earth is going to be able to stop it. There is no way you can stop that truth from being told. It's
Praise God.
coming. But yeah, I think she has something to do with it.
Well, Grandma, we are sorry, and for those who have gone ahead before us. It's,
Wait. I'm not sorry for what they've done or for how they feel about me.
no.
I
That's
figure,
not what I meant. I meant about
oh,
your husband and your son.
well,
Is-
but I had them for 60 years.
oh wow. Okay.
Oh yeah, I had them for 60
Oh.
years. And I've got a sign on my wall that says, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened.
That's wonderful. Grandma, what I want to tell you is that in Africa, we say that what a young man can see standing on top of the empire, what an old man or an old woman can see sitting down, a young man or a young woman cannot see standing on top of the empire
That's right.
building.
That's right.
So um, I still say it. We are humble and glad for your wisdom, because you see with many, many years and what you have gone through. So it is really a blessing for
But wait a minute,
me.
wait a minute. My father finally understood, because I reminded him, common sense in uncommon amounts is what the world calls wisdom. What I learned from that blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise, nobody had learned before, because we don't pay attention. If I was 35 years old, and I took a chance and didn't realize I was taking a chance. I didn't realize how angry the community was going to be. I didn't realize what was going to happen to my children. I didn't realize that they would be beaten and spit on and abused. I didn't know that. I was young and foolish. Had I listened more carefully to my peers, I'd have known better than to do that exercise. And I would have been a tremendous failure. Young people don't know because we don't listen to the old. They do not listen to the old. And it's getting worse instead of better in my country, because now kids are learning everything they learn off the net. Go ahead and say what you were saying.
Well, Grandma, uh, thank you very much. And I would say my children are your grandchildren. And that is why I didn't really want to set an example by calling you, by addressing you based on the culture of this country. But we are on African hour, and please
Okay.
permit me that I would not for me to respect my ancestors and respect the tradition and the culture that was passed down onto me. Your grandchildren are sitting, enjoying with us here. Dr. Manka Nkimben is coming from Minnesota, and Nkimben is zooming in from Chicago. I do not want this conversation to be a dialogue between you and me. I would like to bring them in. Let's listen to what the younger generation uh, have to say, hearing from Grandma.
Okay, go ahead.
Right, sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to speak here on the African Hour. One question that I had you from great grandma Jane
Great, thank you.
is for myself what I noticed when I went to, so I lived in Cameroon from 7th grade to 10th grade. And I noticed something that was very interesting. When I was in school, I introduced myself with my Cameroonian name. I was like, hey, my name is Ndet Kimben. And I was in Cameroon, but my classmates, they were laughing. They were like, what's your English name? Like, what kind of person is this that's come from America and doesn't have an English name? So I'm curious, based on your studies and whatnot, do you believe the reasoning for that is, whether it's some type of inferiority complex or, but I'd love to hear your words on that.
It's going to kill us.
Yeah. I like to pause and said, you are watching African Hour, and our extraordinary guest today is Grandma Jane Elliott. Thank you again, Grandma Jane Elliott, for your wonderful wisdom. And again, I want to reassure my audience and viewers that African Hour brings the best and is balanced and fair.
The United States has managed to spread its ignorance and its knowledge all over the world. And people follow this country as if we knew what we were doing. They seem to be willing to accept what is absolute ignorance in order to be seen as successful in this country or to be seen as successful by this country. We are one of the best places in the world, except that we have terminal ignorance, and it's going to kill us if we don't change our behavior where race is concerned. If we don't stop seeing, look at your hand, if we don't stop seeing the 5 different races, black, white, brown, yellow, red, individually, they aren't worth much. But if you put them all together, you've made a fist. And if you realize that we're all members of the same race, you have made all of those 5 groups powerful. Once they get together, they can make a positive difference all over the world. People all over the world imitate the kinds of things that happen in the United States. And it's worse now than it ever was before, because what somebody in this country says today can be heard instantly all over the globe. And that's unfortunate, because we say things that should never be said. Ignore that. That's the telephone. It'll quit ringing eventually. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have a follow-up question to that, son?
No, I don't have a follow-up question. Thanks for that and being able to invite me here on this interview.
Or whatever this is, right? Eventually, I'm going to have to answer that telephone. Are there any other questions?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Maybe Dr. Manka Nkimben, do you have anything for, do you have a question for Grandma?
Thank you so much for having me on African Hour, and it is indeed an honor to talk to you, Grandma Jane. And so a little bit of what I do is trying to do research with African immigrants in particular and different racial and ethnic groups in the United States. And I've recognized that we're all one human race, but what has happened especially with the history, is that because of the advantages and the disadvantages that we've had over the life course, we find that there's inequities in health that are coming up for the different groups in the United States, where, for example, I work with Black older adults who have dementia and kind of other cognitive issues, and they're higher risk of having dementia. And so now I struggle with trying to describe some of these challenges that I see in the community whenever I'm thinking about we are all one person, but somehow it's worse off for one group than the other. And I'm just trying to, I guess, think through, or how do we begin to think about describing these differences in health that we're seeing, despite the fact that we are all one human race?
Those differences aren't accidental. Those differences are deliberate. Those differences are as deliberate as building a wall on the southern border of the country in order to keep those brown-skinned people out, because, as our former president said, brown-skinned people reproduce too rapidly. What's going on in this country where women of color are concerned is absolutely insane. And if you think I'm lying about that, then you get Michelle Goodwin's book, Policing the Womb. Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God, read this book, and then you'll realize exactly what's going on in this country today. We are allowing, I know now, I didn't understand before, because my husband and I lived in Waterloo, Iowa for 8 years, and he ran a grocery store in the north end of town, which was the black section of town, which it was called at that time. And many of those women were afraid to go to the delivery room because they were afraid either they or their child wouldn't come out alive. I thought this was what this is America. That doesn't happen in this country. And then I read Michelle Goodwin's book. Those women were absolutely right. They knew what could happen to them. And before I read this book, I talked to a group of midwives in Los Angeles. I don't know anything about medicine, for the love of God. Why would they ask me to do this? And I stood there in front of about 40 midwives, and I said, why are you asking me? And they said, because we know that women of color don't get the same treatment in the delivery room that white women do. So we want to be midwives so that every woman will get the same treatment. They will all be treated fairly. And I thought, oh my God, what have we done? What are we doing? Young girls get pregnant. And I think of the Native American girls. They aren't Native American girls. I think of the First Nations girls who disappear and no one looks for them. I think of their babies who don't get delivered properly. It sounds as though I regard this country as an insane asylum, but I do, because it is absolutely insane to treat people positively or negatively on the basis of a chemical in their skin. It makes no sense. But if you have been raised from pre-birth, we do this prenatally. Women of color don't get the same treatment that so-called white women do prenatally. You know that, and I know that. And they don't get the same treatment in the delivery room. So what we have here, we have created a situation in which people have been educated. They haven't been educated. They have been miseducated. People go to medical school for years. So they're in the classroom, they should know a whole lot, but they only know what the people who are teaching them know. And if the people who are teaching them know that who we want to survive in this country are people who are melanemic, that's exactly what you learn, unless I'm very much mistaken, in medical school. And if it isn't stated precisely, you know what it is. You know how we teach people. I know how people are educated in this country, and we are educated to believe in the rightness of whiteness. And it's time to get over that. It's time for us to realize that much of what we learn in school is history is not history. It's his story, however he wants to tell it. Eventually, we're going to start studying her story, and we'll hear about history as the women experienced it. You have forgotten more since breakfast about racism than I will ever know. You know that, and I know that, because you live with it, and you are on the receiving end of it. I can afford to be ignorant, because as long as I'm white, I'm all right. However, the main problem confronting so-called white males in this country today is the fact that within 30 years, Melanated people, white people, will be a numerical minority in the United States of America. You know that, and I know that, and they are scared to death that people of your color group are going to do to us what we have done to you. And this is the reason we want to increase the number of white babies born in this country and decrease the number of children of color who survive the delivery room. Now, this sounds like a horrible, horrible statement about the medical profession in this country, but take a look. Look at the statistics. Read this book. Read The Myth of Race by Robert. Yeah, have you read it? It's one of those books that you can't deny, because here it is, Robert Wells Sussman, I think his name. But everybody needs to read that book. And I shouldn't be telling you what to read. You've already learned it all. You know more than I do. But until you see it in black and white, and that's another thing we ought to realize, that white paper with no black writing on it wouldn't mean a damn thing.
Grandma, what is the title again for my audience to know?
This one is Policing the Womb by Michelle Goodwin, Policing the Womb. And the other one, everybody has to read The Color of Man. If you haven't read The Color of Man, for the good Lord, get it. And if you haven't read The Color of Law, read the book, The Color of Law. The Color of Law. Get it and read it this week, everybody, because there are 2 pages. Just if you just read the 2 pages, and I can never remember the numbers, but in that book, it tells you how our laws were made and how they are perpetuated to perpetuate the myth of the rightness of whiteness. You don't know, you suspect it. You think, not in the land of the free and the home of the brave. No, I live in the land of the free. You live in the home of the brave. Make no mistake about this. That's what this is all about. It doesn't take courage for me to stand up and say these things, because I know that nobody's going to kill me, because I say to them now on the college campus, look, you boys who are doing this, 3 boys sitting there doing this and pointing their little guns at me. And I say, look, fellas, I know what you're saying to one another. You'd like to see me dead. Let me warn you about something. If you kill me, you'll do me a favor. However, you need to know that you might make a martyr out of me. And then you might have to spend the rest of your lives celebrating Jane Elliott Day once a year. Now, do you want to do that? And then they go, no, no, no. And they make a cross out of their first fingers and they swear, keep me alive on their campus. That's the reason I'm still alive, because I'm white. Think of Martin Luther King Jr., who should still be alive. Think of the number of children of color who don't survive the delivery room, who should still be alive. And they aren't dying because there was something physically wrong with them. In many cases, they are dying because they don't have the right color skin. Now, I know that sounds like a terrible, terrible indictment of our medical profession. They are doing what they know is acceptable behavior. And from 2016 until 2020, it was extremely acceptable behavior. And if you haven't read the first, and you can't get it anymore, a man named Ben Wattenberg, a brilliant Jewish person, brilliant, wrote a book called The Birth Dearth in 1987. You can't get your hands on it because I've tried. I found one that I can get for $7,500. I don't have that kind of money. Another person wrote to me and said, I found it for $1,500. If I can get that man's address again, I'll call him and say, get the book, I'll pay you for the book. The first paragraph of that book says, the number one problem confronting the United States of America is there aren't enough white babies being born in this country today. If we don't do something and do it quickly, white people will no longer be a numerical majority in this country, and this will no longer be a white man's land. That was the first paragraph. The second paragraph said, and there are some things I read and I think, oh my God, this can't be true. The second paragraph says there are 3 things we can do to solve this problem. Number 1, we could pay women to have babies as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine, unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all colors to have babies, so we don't want to do that. He says the second thing we could do is realize that, let me think a minute. The second thing we could do is, the last thing is realize that the 60% that time, 60% of the fetuses that are aborted in this country every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Now think about that. Think about what he is saying. What happened shortly after that? Shortly after that, they decided in 2016, Mr. T. Rump decided we should kill all the close all the Planned Parenthood clinics, because he's quite certain that that's the only thing that happens in Planned Parenthood clinics is abortions. No, we have to realize that Planned Parenthood clinics are for many things for women's needs, and they can get their needs taken care of at those places without it costing as much as it would cost if they went to the hospital or the doctor. That is not what Planned Parenthood clinics are for. You have to realize that the day you close the Planned Parenthood clinics, you are saying to every melanemic white female, you're going to have babies. Make no mistake about this. I was born in 1933, the year Adolf Hitler and Franklin Roosevelt came to power in their respective countries. From 1933 until 1945, I heard my father ranting about what was happening in Germany as a result of what he heard on the radio. Now, in 2016, I saw repeated in this country what I heard on the radio in Germany from 1933 till 1945. That is where we have fallen. That is how far we have fallen. And when I heard his first speech, I thought, this is Hitlerian. This man is a Hitler advocate. And I said, Jane, come on, Jane, you're exaggerating. That is the way it is. And then I read the book, When at Times the Mob is Swayed. Have you read it? When at Times the Mob is Swayed.
I like to pause and said, you are watching African Hour. And our extraordinary guest today is Grandma Jane Elliott. Thank you again, Grandma Jane Elliott, for your wonderful wisdom. And again, I want to reassure my audience and viewers that African Hour brings the best and is balanced and fair. Over to you again.
And in the probably the first chapter of that book, he says, Donald Trump has in his bedside table in a locked drawer, the book, The New World Order, which is the writings of Adolf Hitler. I wasn't wrong when I saw what was happening as being Hitlerian. It is, and you see him doing the same things now that Hitler did in Germany. You see the Proud Boys acting exactly as the Nazis did. I'm too old for the world. When you talked about the African thing that young people don't know, but people on the top of the mountain do, yeah, we know a lot because we heard a lot and we've seen a lot, and we can see when history starts to repeat itself. Somebody who said, those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. We are repeating the mistakes of the past in this country, and other people, other countries are going along to get along. Do not do that. The one good thing we have done in this country in the last 5 years is elect Joe Biden. Because if we had not, I would not be allowed to speak to you today. Make no mistake about this. I have been banned on colleges and universities because of the evangelical Christians and the rabid Republicans. And I don't call them Republicans anymore because Donald Trump knocked the L out of the word Republican. And his main interest is the pubic area. He wants to control women's use of their ability to reproduce or not reproduce. They have become Republicans. I recognize it when I see it. And that makes me dangerous. That makes me dangerous for college students to hear. So I have been banned on colleges and universities. You need to know that, so that if you get angry responses to what I'm saying, that's one of the reasons. They are being conditioned to the idea that if you think in a different way, you need to be stopped.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You have to know that there's more here than just a little old white grandma who doesn't know what the hell she's talking about.
Well,
okay.
It's a blessing again to have you, Grandma. Thank God the gods of technology brought my internet back. I was just sweating because my internet all of a sudden went away. But
Oh, did it?
Grandma,
Okay. You think that's an accident? When I'm on, oftentimes the energy goes away. Oh, there's something wrong with my internet. I think, and I know what it is. Some people don't want you to know what I'm saying. But you see, I've been cursed by the worst and blessed by the best.
I like to pause and said, you are watching African Hour, and our extraordinary guest today is Grandma Jane Elliott. Thank you again, Grandma Jane Elliott, for your wonderful wisdom. And again, I want to reassure my audience and viewers that African Hour brings the best and is balanced and fair.